Welcome to the very first episode of Age of Technology. Today we're going to talk about batteries, and together with my mate Henry we're going to explore the history and future of everyday technologies. So today we're talking about batteries, and I'm going to explore the history. I'm going to talk about that with Henry, and he's going to enlighten us on the future of, today batteries, but every episode is going to be a different technology, and we're going to explore that, both history and future.
So for today, we're going to talk about batteries.
Yeah, you probably have seen that in the title of this episode.
Mm-hmm. And we'll get to that, but batteries are pretty heavily developed technology, and there's also, there's a lot to discuss about it. But you are going to enlighten us on how it started.
Yes. So we're going to start a long, long time ago in 1749.
Really?
Yes.
That old?
Yeah. Benjamin Franklin. Do you know him?
Oh, really? Franklin, what did he not invent? Well,
yeah, what did he not invent? He's one of the founders of the United States, it says on Wikipedia, which is quite interesting. But do you know what Benjamin Franklin is most famous for?
Well, everybody knows him from the kite.
Yes, but that's not what I want to say.
Oh, well, then I guess I'm out of options.
Okay, so imagine you're an average American.
Yeah.
Where do you see his face most often?
On the dollar?
Yes, $100.
$100.
Yes.
Okay.
I didn't know that. Did you?
No, I don't know dollars.
Okay, but we're not Americans.
Yeah.
So,
we got an excuse.
Yeah, we do. But yeah, Benjamin Franklin coined the word battery because he saw something. He was busy doing some scientific experiments. And a set of capacitors.
Capacitors.
Yeah,
okay.
So it's a way to store energy.
Yeah.
And he said, okay, I'm going to call this a battery. But did you know that Benjamin Franklin had a quite busy life? We only know him for his scientific discoveries. But it's a beautiful Wikipedia quote. Franklin was a renowned polymath and a leading author, printer, political theorist, politician, Freemason, postmaster, scientist, inventor, humorist, civic activist, statesman, and diplomat. Wow. Man, that guy was busy.
Yeah, that's what a lot of people had in the time. Also, like Newton and Galileo. All those people had a lot of things to do.
Yeah, I didn't know that actually.
Yeah.
But he coined the word, and a battery wasn't really invented yet. So I'm bringing you to 1780. Luigi Galvani. Yeah, my Italian is not that good.
Mediocre.
But, yeah, let's say that. And he was doing some experiments with frogs. And you might have heard of that.
Yeah.
That he had some metals, and he touched the frog, and the frog was dead. And somehow it moved.
Yeah.
He called it animal electricity. Well,
okay.
It's ridiculous. It doesn't exist. But he proposed it in 1780. And a friend of his, he thought it was nonsense. And he proposed a different cause. It was the causation of two different metals.
Ah.
And that turned out to be true, because in 1791, he proposed that in a scientific journal. And now his name is quite famous, because his name is Alessandro Volta.
Volta.
Volt.
Ah, yes.
And you might have heard of that, because it's now famous in the electrical engineering. And that's quite interesting. In 1800, he developed that into the first actual battery.
Yeah, I was about to say that earlier, because was it actually a capacitor or a battery that Franklin was working on? Because that's a clear distinction nowadays.
It was a capacitor.
Okay.
A battery didn't exist then.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
But he named it a battery, and over the course of the years, that narrowed down into the battery that we know right now.
Cool.
So yeah, in 1800, the first battery was created, and it was just a stacking of zinc and copper and electrolytes. And
what did they use as electrolyte?
I don't really know actually. Let me check. It was not what I anticipated as a question here.
Yeah, I'm more of the technical side anyway.
Yeah.
So.
It was mercury, I think.
So I'm going to place a small editorial note here. The electrodes were actually separated by a layer of cloth or cardboard soaked in brine, according to the Wikipedia article.
Anyway, that was the first battery. And then 25 years later, the Oxford Electric Bell was created. Have you heard of that?
I have heard of that one, yes.
Oh, okay, what do you know about that?
It's still going.
It is.
Yeah.
The experiment was started in 1840, which is 177 years ago.
Yeah. And nobody dares to open it.
No, it's quite amazing. It has been ringing for years and years now. And the fun thing is, the inventors the creators of that instrument wrote down that it normally stopped working after 3 or 4 years. And it has still been ringing ever since.
But were they still alive where it was like ringing beyond the lifetime of or expectancy of the battery?
I don't know.
Because then it would be like, okay, it's already running now like 2, 3, 4 times as long. What's happening here?
Yeah, nobody knows.
Okay.
Because they don't dare to open it.
Yeah,
because they don't want to disturb the experiment. And
they didn't write down what it's made of.
No, they didn't.
Oh, wow.
No, you can look at pictures or drawings, of course, of other electric bells from at that time. You can make a good guess, but nobody knows, and maybe they're gonna open it once it stops ringing. But who knows?
Who knows? And that's so crazy. We could have had maybe dozens of technologies coming out of this, and it's just that everybody values the historic value of it and doesn't want to open it. It's kind of.
Do you want to disturb that experiment just because
out of curiosity? I probably would. Like, who cares? The people are dead anyway, so...
That's quite kind of evil, man.
Yeah. I'm not a historian, you know. I want to innovate.
But probably it's just a voltaic battery. Well, that's just those coins that I described earlier.
Yeah.
Zinc, copper, electrolyte, repeat. And it's probably not that brilliant. But who knows? We don't.
Well, I mean... Even if it's not brilliant, it's still running. And I think that's the only thing that's still working after so many years.
It is. It's a world record.
Yeah, so...
Yes. So in 1836, some differences were made, some improvements. And 1.1 volt battery, which does not sound like a whole lot, because the world record, I've looked into this, is 25 million volts.
As a battery?
Yeah, as a battery. So
wow,
it's a bit more. But what's the best thing about these improvements is it wasn't the time that the telegraph started going viral, I don't know.
Getting more widespread?
Indeed. So the 1.1 volt battery was used for that.
Okay.
Do you know Morse code?
Well, I don't know it, but I know what it is.
Yeah, of course. But I started looking into it, and I've made some beepy noises too.
Oh,
yeah,
nice.
Okay, continuing. Some minor improvements in the next years, and nothing really started to go anywhere. And it took about 20 years, and then the first rechargeable battery was invented.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so which was made out of lead.
How much is that then?
1859.
Huh, okay.
Made out of lead acid.
Lead acid, yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And that's still being used in cars today.
Yeah, that's... it's still being used because it's so reliable, really.
It is. And it's quite cheap.
Yeah.
The only thing is it's quite heavy. Lead is about 13 times the weight of water, I think.
Yeah, but also the energy density is quite low, so you do need quite big batteries.
Yes, and therefore it's only used in cars.
Yeah.
They are heavy by themselves, so adding a few kilograms doesn't make a big of a difference.
Yeah, to some degree, but indeed, a few kilograms are okay.
So that's quite awesome. And then nothing really happened until around 1900. Some dude, Waldemar Junger, I'm butchering that name, probably, invented the nickel-iron battery.
Nickel-iron.
Yeah, but you wouldn't have heard of Junger because it was stolen by Thomas Edison.
I've heard of Thomas Edison stealing ideas of other people.
Yeah, so I found this really sketchy website. It will be in the show notes, I think. jwadonweb.com, which lists 9 inventions Edison did not make. And one of them is the light bulb, of course. Everybody knows that, I think.
Yeah. Well, I think there's still some controversy about it, but it's he probably didn't make it.
Yeah, and the same for the nickel-iron battery.
Okay.
Which is quite cool. Then in 1955, the alkaline battery, which we still use today, the AA battery, the AAA battery. And that is one of the only things that we Europeans use the same as the Americans.
I'm sorry, what do you mean?
Okay, let me start over. The AA and AAA battery is one thing that is the same in Europe and in America.
Okay.
So you've got the 50 hertz and the 60 hertz thing. You've got an imperial system versus the metric system. But batteries are the same worldwide.
Okay.
And that amazed me. And
standards,
then,
yes.
Yes, standards. It's nice. Everybody should do that.
Yeah.
And then 30 years later, the lithium battery started to develop.
Lithium-ion batteries.
Yes, indeed.
Okay.
And we use that in my computer, we
use it everywhere.
Yeah, in my mobile phone, and which will be a topic maybe sometime, which could be interesting. And now we are here today. Okay, there's one thing I need to mention because this is really awesome. Have you heard of the Baghdad battery?
The what battery?
Baghdad.
No.
It's a city, you know that, in Iraq.
Oh, Baghdad, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so around the birth of Christ, around 2,000 years ago, the Baghdad battery was developed. And we're not really sure if it ever worked, but there were found 3 items close to one another which could form a battery 2,000 years old.
Wow.
Could you imagine what the world would be like today if that one had been developed, you know?
I guess, but on the other hand, I mean, you can make a battery, but how? They didn't even know about electricity, so...
They did.
They did?
They did.
Oh. Huh. Okay.
Not much, not like we do today, but...
Yeah, okay. Because I thought it was more like... No, okay, yeah, Greek time. I think the Greeks thought about electricity as well.
Yeah, I think so too.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty remarkable.
Can you imagine?
Yeah, man, that's... Well, but there are so many things. In the end, I think knowledge is getting lost. So even if if you also look at the libraries that got burned down in Alexandria, for example.
Definitely.
There was so much knowledge there that we don't know of. The most famous example being the pyramids, of course. We still don't know how they made that.
Yeah.
So,
there are a lot of movies on that. Also, YouTubers who have devoted videos on how did the Egyptians build those pyramids. And
aliens.
Aliens, of course.
Yeah.
What else?
Well, I'm not a complot theorist, so yeah.
Who knows?
And that's that's interesting that you say, because lithium-ion batteries. So when again were they invented?
1985, but it took a few years to get them developed. So
they started development in the 80s, and then it got more widespread around, I guess, 2000s. Then 2010.
Yeah, a bit earlier, I think.
Yeah. And the reason being is that it's actually quite difficult to come up with new battery technologies. So things you can try to work on are, to lower the cost, and this is especially nice for consumer grade batteries, of course, but also for car technology. The power density and energy density is something that you can work on.
Isn't that something that is chemically bounded?
Yeah, but of course you got different combinations and setups where you can play a little bit with, for example, power density is something that is indeed depends on the materials you use. There are lots of materials you can try, but not all of them are practical. So what you also want to try you can try to prolong the lifetime of the battery, because as you know, lithium-ion batteries do tend to die out after say 4 or 5 years of use.
Yeah, I think it's even less.
Because, if your laptop battery at some point just doesn't charge or it doesn't keep charge beyond an hour, that's the problem with lithium-ion batteries.
Yeah, so I've had this laptop for 5 years now, I think, and the second battery is almost dead.
Oh, it's the second battery?
Yeah, it is.
Huh. Yeah, so that's how quickly they degrade, and that is something that can be innovated. And let's see. But the problem is that usually when you try to improve one thing, you have to make trade-offs on other stuff. So for example, if you try to make a battery that has a very high power density, it might be that it's very costly to produce. Or if you have a very low-cost battery, it might not have a very great lifetime. And that is the reason why it is so difficult to innovate all the batteries. So since like I said, there are a lot of configurations that work, I'll just try to pick out a few interesting technologies that I found. But there are definitely way more technologies and ways to make batteries. So I'll just put in the show notes like a nice list.
What I want to follow up on what you said just a few seconds ago is how much can you charge a battery?
Mm-hmm.
And have you looked into the new iPhone 8 and iPhone 10?
No, I didn't.
Okay, because they can charge remotely. You don't have to put an adapter into it.
Yeah.
And that's quite interesting because if you can make the range of that quite well, you don't even need a battery.
So I read about technologies that indeed can try to pick up energy from, say, radio waves or stuff like that. But I think that's still beyond the scope of what is practical or even is going to be consumer grade. But NFC chips, remotely charging has been a thing, of course, for years already. But that's more about the way of charging, not necessarily about the battery, because it's still, I think, lithium-ion batteries.
Yeah, probably. I don't know.
Yeah. So one thing that's actually quite exotic is a battery technology that uses all liquid active materials. And that is pretty interesting to me.
It's like recycling.
No, it's so usually you have electrodes that are like lithium plate and then some carbon. Mm-hmm. But this battery uses all liquids. So you got molten salt electrolyte and molten metals as electrodes. And the way it works is that you have 3 different layers. And all layers have different densities. So they stay on top, or they float on top of each other.
Oh, that's quite smart.
Yeah, and the nice thing about this is that the ion mobility through liquids is pretty high. So it can also very quickly give you current.
But doesn't that mean that you have to keep your battery at a high temperature all the time?
Yes, that's indeed.
Or compressed, of course.
Well, and that is exactly the problem that they are still working on. The first prototype used to be at a temperature of like, I think 500 or 600 degrees.
That doesn't sound safe.
Yeah, the working temperature is quite high. But now they've already brought it down to 270 degrees Celsius, which still sounds high, but nothing that is undoable.
What is the temperature of a battery nowadays when I would look at my phone?
Lithium-ion batteries operate at between 0 and 40 degrees. Well, I mean, that's ideal temperature to operate on. Probably they get like 30, 40 degrees, something like that.
Okay, just a side note, we're talking in Celsius right now.
Yeah,
for those listening. From
I don't know what that would
system.
be in Fahrenheit. Maybe we should try to Kelvin.
What I do know is that 50 degrees Celsius is about 120 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay, so let's say 100 for a normal battery.
Yeah, about I guess about that. Yeah. So and these, of course, the liquid battery is not meant to be used in a phone, for example. It's however it could be very well used to charge up the battery and to release current for energy grids. So when there's a high demand, the batteries can very quickly meet that demand by giving the current.
You mean that when it's night, electrical use will be much lower than just when it's noon, for example. But when it's evening, it will be max, I think.
Yeah, so there are certain moments of the day indeed where there is peak performance. When people come back from home, they take a shower, they start to cook and such.
Watching television, of course.
Yeah, or when there's a very, very big event, then sometimes you need batteries to give extra power to the net. Now, as a side note, you might wonder, okay, how am I going to contain this? And that's because that's how the current flows. It's like a metal box. That keeps all the liquids inside. And then there's like a metal rod that's sticked inside and that works as the other electrode. So you got like a running current that way. And yeah, also, well, the benefit of this would be though that it's actually the materials used are low cost and earth abundant. So it would be actually pretty low cost to make.
What is low cost compared to lithium ion?
I guess so, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Low cost to produce because there are just things that are so costly to produce that it's only viable in the lab. But this could actually work in that regard. Now, another also pretty exotic example is the lithium air battery. And that is a sort of open cell, or at least in the early iterations of this prototype, it wasn't. So you had a lithium electrode, then some electrolyte, and then another electrode that's like a carbon spongy grating. And so what happens is that air goes to sit in the carbon, and then the lithium, when the battery is discharged, the lithium goes towards the oxygen and then combines to make either lithium peroxide or lithium dioxide. And that way you can start to make current flow.
Ain't that something that you can't reuse? I mean, this seems like a chemical reaction that you can't reverse.
Yeah, it is. And that's a good question. How do you charge a battery like this? And that is, I think they use triiodide.
Iodide.
I think triiodide. There is a way to discharge or to charge the battery, to reverse it. But indeed, that's also a hurdle to overcome. But yeah, that also determines like when the battery is discharged fully, all the lithium has combined with the oxide, and it forms like a film over the carbon. And then when the reaction can't happen anymore, and then the battery is discharged. So yeah, obvious disadvantages are indeed it actually very quickly loses efficiency, for example, but also it's just it discharges pretty quickly. However, there is a new design that I read about. It's actually pretty new. I think in the last years developed, where all the oxygen is contained in one cell, because that's another problem, is that you need pure oxygen. Otherwise, side reactions might happen, and that's what you don't want.
So you can't use air, for instance?
No, because air doesn't have clear oxygen at all. There's like nitrogen in there and other gases.
Yeah, air is like
5 or 6%.
Oh, I had 20 in mind.
Oh, 20.
Let me check.
Yeah, because I don't know the exact numbers. So when you use a closed cell, then you can just keep the oxygen aside, make sure it's pure, and that already overcomes that hurdle.
I found it, by the way. It's 20.95.
Okay,
so I was pretty close.
Yeah, you were way closer than I was. Yeah, and but these technologies still have to be very heavily developed to make them viable.
But that's of course something that will happen in the next few years.
I guess it's hard to tell, because especially I feel like battery innovation is a little bit like fusion, where if you overcome the one hurdle, or if you tackle one technological problem, you'll find 5 others.
That could be definitely true, because I skipped a few things in the history, but there was an invention in 1836, in 1837, 1838, 1839, which were all small improvements, of course.
Yeah. I mean, there have been like 4 or 5 iterations of all these batteries that I told you about, so I think it's better to just lay out the idea. And then there are, let me see, there's 1 or 2 more I want to touch on. One is a nanowire battery.
What's that?
Which uses nanowires in order to improve the surface area of the electrode. So, of course, nanowires do have a very high surface area because they are so small. And this should prolong the lifetime of the battery and also increase efficiency. And the problem was, I think, that the nanowires are pretty hard to make still, of course. But also that they still degraded pretty quickly, I think. So what they made is gold nanowires.
That sounds expensive.
Indeed, and that is exactly the problem with this type of battery. It's like way too expensive, because gold, even though it's like very tiny material, it adds up in the end. And it's also quite heavy. Yeah. Then the one last option that is actually quite realistic is a magnesium battery. So then what it does is it replaces lithium altogether and makes magnesium electrodes. The problem with that, however, is that magnesium ion mobility is quite low in liquids. So therefore you can't really quickly release all the current from the battery. So what the researchers try to come up with is try to get a solid state electrolyte. And the benefit of that is that the ignition temperature of magnesium is way higher than not of magnesium, but of the electrolyte they use. That one is way higher, and that because usually when a lithium-ion battery blows up, it's because of the electrolyte catching fire.
Is that what happened to all the Samsung?
Yeah, the electrolyte got too hot, and then you get an irreversible reaction.
And then
that makes it explode. Yeah. And for this particular battery, you could basically just put a flamethrower on there, and it still wouldn't explode.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, it's like ignition temperature was like 800 degrees or something. So yeah.
Yeah, that could be cool.
Yeah, that's and I think I heard rumors that Honda is trying to implement this already for in next year for new models
for their cars.
Yeah, but that's rumors. I haven't confirmed that.
I guess we will find out.
Yeah, and hopefully we can especially make batteries lighter because, like you indicated as well, with the lead acid batteries, they're just really heavy. And I think it would be nice if the batteries would only just be a few kilograms.
Of course. That improves efficiency for cars.
Yeah, especially with full electric cars. The weight of the batteries also determines how far you can drive.
Yes, of course.
Because if you have a heavier car, then you need more current. And that, like, if you want more current, you'll get heavier cars. So
is it the same in a laptop that most of its weight is the battery? I wouldn't know, actually.
I don't think so. I think the housing is... I wouldn't know, to be honest.
Okay, maybe after the recording of this podcast, I will put my laptop on a scale and then remove the battery and just do it again.
Yeah, that's a good one. Let's do that. Okay, so that wraps up this episode, I guess.
Batteries.
Yeah.
250 years of history and a whole lot to come.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Now, where can people find us?
We've got a website, I think.
We should have a website by the time
by the time we upload this one, we will have a website.
Yeah.
But it will be in the show notes.
Yeah.
Because I can say something right now, but we're not sure that is going to be the website.
Right.
And of course on iTunes,
YouTube, or SoundCloud.
SoundCloud is one, of course. And on the website, you can always find us there.
Under the name
Age of Technology.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Okay, so that's it for this episode. Thanks for listening.
Yes, thank you for listening. Thank you for joining me here today.
Yeah, thank you for joining me. And until next time.
Adios.